Before I invested $1 into corporate housing, I built a 5-step system that lets me analyze any real estate deal in about 20 minutes. It has stopped me from making at least 2 expensive mistakes. Today, I'm walking you through the entire framework, step by step, with real numbers. When I was running Airbnb properties, I made every analysis mistake in the book. I'd look at the projected revenue on a listing, do rough math in my head, and convince myself the numbers worked. I bought based on optimism, not on a real framework. One property nearly cost me $40,000 in the first year because I missed 3 expense categories that I should have caught before I signed anything. That experience is what forced me to build this system. I use it on every single deal I look at now, and it takes about 20 minutes. 5 metrics, in this order: net cash flow per door, gross rent multiplier, true expense ratio, vacancy sensitivity test, and exit optionality. Each one takes about 4 minutes. Together, they'll tell you whether a deal is worth pursuing, what the real risk is, and whether you've a backup plan if the market shifts. Let's start with metric 1. Metric 1 is net cash flow per door, the amount that actually lands in your account after every bill is paid. This sounds obvious, but most people skip straight past it. Here's why. When you look at a property listing and see it generating $4,000 a month in rent, your brain does something unhelpful. It starts spending that $4,000. It feels like income. It's not income, it's gross revenue. Before a single dollar of that reaches you, your mortgage payment comes out, then your insurance, then property taxes, then any utilities you're covering, then vacancy costs, because no property is occupied 100% of the time, no matter what the listing says. What's left after all of that is your actual net cash flow. And on a property generating $4,000 in gross rent, it might be $600, it might be $900. It depends entirely on the deal structure. You might be wondering, so how do I quickly calculate where a deal actually lands? Here's the math. Take a property bringing in $4,000 gross per month. Mortgage is $2,200. Insurance is $300. Taxes are $400. You cover utilities, $200. You reserve 5% for vacancy, another $200. Your actual net cash flow is $700, not $4,000. Not even close to $4,000. That $700 is what you actually built your life plan around. If that number doesn't work for you, the deal doesn't work, no matter what the gross revenue looks like on the listing. The reason this metric matters so much is what it tells you about how you should scale. If you've 10 doors each generating $100 in net cash flow, you own 10 sets of problems for $1,000 a month. If you've 2 doors each generating $500, you own 2 sets of problems for the same $1,000. Same income, 80% less complexity. Net cash flow per door pushes you toward concentrated, efficient deals, not just more doors. But knowing the net cash flow of a single property doesn't tell you how quickly that investment pays itself back. That's metric 2. Metric 2 is the gross rent multiplier, the GRM. This is the fastest filter I know for sorting out deals worth analyzing from ones that aren't. Here's the formula. Take the purchase price and divide it by the gross annual rental income. That's it. It tells you roughly how many years the property would take to pay for itself through rent, assuming 0 expenses. You're not going to use this number to make a final decision, but you're going to use it to kill bad deals quickly. An investor should never spend an hour modeling a deal that a 60-second GRM calculation would have eliminated. You might be wondering, what number am I actually looking for? Here's what good versus bad looks like. Property A, $500,000 purchase price, $60,000 annual gross rent. GRM is 8.3. That's a deal worth spending time on. Property B, $800,000 purchase price, $48,000 annual gross rent. GRM is 16.7. That property takes nearly 17 years to pay itself off in gross rent before a single expense. You kill that deal in under a minute and move on. Target a GRM as close to single digits as possible for your market. Anything above 15, walk away immediately. One important warning here. A good GRM doesn't mean a good deal. It means the deal is worth looking at more closely. I've seen properties with a GRM of 7 that were absolute money traps once you dug into the actual expenses. The GRM filters out the obviously bad deals. It doesn't confirm the good ones. A property with a strong gross rent multiplier can still be bleeding money through operating costs that never show up on the listing summary. Most investors stop their analysis too early. They see good revenue numbers and skip the expense calculation entirely. That mistake is what Metric 3 is specifically designed to prevent. Metric 3 is the true expense ratio, and this is where the $40,000 mistake I mentioned earlier almost happened to me. Most investors underestimate their expenses because they only calculate the obvious ones. Mortgage, insurance, taxes, those are easy. The ones that kill deals are the ones nobody writes down. Property management fees if you ever hire help, typically 8 to 12% of gross rent. Capital expense reserves, money you set aside for the roof, the HVAC system, the plumbing, the appliances, typically another 10 to 15% of gross rent. Seasonal utility spikes, vacancy costs beyond what you budgeted. The maintenance calls that happen every few months. If you add all of that up honestly, your true expense ratio on a residential property is often 45 to 55% of gross revenue. That means your $4,000 gross property might only be generating $1,800 to $2,200 in real available income before your mortgage. Here's what an honest expense breakdown actually looks like. On a $4,000 gross property, here's where the money actually goes. Mortgage takes $2,200. The operating expenses, insurance, taxes, management, capital expense reserve, vacancy, absorb another $1,100. Net cash flow, $700. A true expense ratio of about 82% including debt service. Knowing this number before you buy is the difference between an investment and an expensive lesson. Metric 4 is the vacancy sensitivity test, and this one is where I see investors build plans that collapse the moment reality shows up. Most deal analyses assume near-perfect occupancy, 90, 95, sometimes 100%. That assumption is how you build a plan that works perfectly on paper and fails in month 3 when your tenant moves out unexpectedly and you carry the mortgage alone for 6 weeks. The test I run is simple. I take the deal and I stress test it at 3 occupancy levels, 70%, 50%, and 40%. If the cash flow goes negative at 70% occupancy, I walk away immediately. That means a single tenant turnover or a slow leasing month makes you cash flow negative. A deal worth owning should stay above break-even at 65% occupancy at a minimum, and ideally at 50%. If your deal cannot survive a bad few months without threatening your finances, it's not a resilient investment. It's a bet. Here's the stress test on our sample property. At 90% occupancy, net cash flow is $700. At 70%, it goes negative, minus $120 a month. That means a single slow month breaks the deal. This property fails the vacancy test. If this were a real opportunity, I'd walk away here without a second thought, regardless of how good the GRM and expense ratio looked. Metric 5 is exit optionality, and this is the one I completely ignored when I was buying Airbnb properties, which is why I got trapped. Exit optionality means how many different ways can this property make money if your original plan stops working. When I bought my Airbnbs, they only penciled out as short-term rentals. The moment the platform changed its algorithm and my bookings dropped, I had no backup. The long-term rents in those markets didn't even cover the mortgage. I was stuck. The rule I use now is simple. Before I buy any property, I have to be able to answer yes to at least 3 of these questions. Can I run it as a corporate midterm rental? Can I sell it to an owner-occupant at a price that makes sense? Can I lease it long-term and still break even? If I cannot get to 3 yes answers, I do not buy the property. So here's the complete system. 5 metrics, 20 minutes, any deal. Metric 1, net cash flow per door. This tells you what actually lands in your account after every bill is paid. The gross revenue number on a listing is completely meaningless without it. Metric 2, gross rent multiplier. This is your 60-second filter to eliminate deals that can never return your capital at a reasonable pace. Metric 3, true expense ratio. This catches all the hidden costs that kill deals investors thought were profitable. Set aside 10 to 15% for capital expense reserves alone. Metric 4, vacancy sensitivity test. Stress test at 70%, 50%, and 40% occupancy. If the deal goes negative before 65%, walk away. Metric 5. Exit optionality. You need at least 3 different ways the property can generate income before you buy. If only one plan works, you're taking on risk you cannot control. Run every single deal through this framework before you commit any capital. Now you've the system. The next video is where I run it live. I take my actual 3 Airbnb properties and run them through all 3 replacement models using these exact 5 metrics. The numbers that came out surprised me. If this was useful, hit subscribe. Real numbers, real decisions, every week. In the next video, I take my 3 actual Airbnb properties and run them through all 3 replacement models using this exact framework. One of those properties generated a better net cash flow number as a corporate rental than it ever did as an Airbnb, and I almost missed it because the gross revenue looked lower. That comparison is in the next video. It's in the playlist right now. Click it.